Okay, let's circle back around to performance controllers. And we've talked about this earlier in this class, but now that we have a set figured out, or at least the start of one, let's look at how these can be used. Okay, so first, I'm going to turn my push on so we can kind of see how that maps onto our session. Okay, now as soon as that comes online, you're going to see that box around parts of the clip slot grid here. Okay, there it is. So we have this orange kind of box. So that shows us what we can see on the push when it comes to launching clips. I can navigate around using the arrow keys, but that's what that would be. If I was going to perform this with the push, I would go into the mode on the push that shows me the clip slot grid, and then I could just launch clips, you know, all day long. It'd be great. It is great. If I want to use something outside of this orange box, I can move the box around. Okay, so in this case, I don't need to do any mapping like what we talked about before, because the push is set up just to like see it and map to it. If I wanted to map a different controller, I could. Let's go back to my Remote Zero SL, this one, and let's map that. Now this, I only have like 8 buttons on this. I don't have a whole clip slot grid, but I could map those to launching my scenes. So in order to do that, I'm going to go Command M, click the first scene and hit a button, second scene, button, third scene, button, fourth, go down that way, even if they're not labeled. That's it. Okay, I turn off MIDI mapping. Now I can launch those scenes using my controller here. So it's these. There we go. It's like hard to navigate this camera. Okay, so let's launch the first scene. Okay, let's jump to the third scene. Skip all the way to the ninth. Oh, that one's silent. Let's get that new beat going in here. Sweet. Back. Okay, that's great. Now I don't have enough buttons to cue individual clips here with this particular controller, but if I did have a bunch of buttons, I could do it. So look for that when you're shopping for a controller for performance, if you are. Now, once we get to this point in our Ableton adventure, we're gonna unlock a couple little secret things. Okay, there's a couple things that don't appear on the screen, but only in certain situations they do. Okay, so let's go to a new video and talk about those. All right, so sometimes it happens when you're recording hundreds of videos that something goes wrong, and that's the case here. So I'm done filming this class, and to make a long story short, this video that you're about to watch didn't capture any audio. My mic wasn't working or something, so I'm just going to re-record it. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because I have to go back and recreate this. This track is fine as it is, but I don't have this all set up. So that's why there's nothing here, because I'm going back and doing it that way. Luckily, when this happens, usually I can do it without anyone knowing because I wear the same clothes every day. But in this case, you're going to know. Happens kind of a lot, actually. Anyway, so here's the thing that we were going to talk about. These secret hidden controls. Now, when I was walking around and showing you the MIDI devices that I have laying around here, controllers and stuff, I showed you this foot pedal, right? The reason that I use a foot pedal, my old performance rig, when I used to perform a lot, this is really weird, but I performed on these this set of gloves. So I had gloves and they were mapped to all different sounds. It's kind of like the thing Imogen Heap is doing, if you're familiar with her, although I was doing it 10 years before her. Not that it matters, but I'm just saying. But in order to interact with my computer, I needed to use foot pedals because I couldn't touch anything. It would just trigger a bunch of sounds. So I relied heavily on these secret things that are happening. If I go into MIDI mapping mode, okay, we're familiar with this now. I can map anything to do something, but I also get a couple new things. I get these things down here, and I get a big play button down here, right? So that's what this is all about. What these are going to do is let you advance up or down, okay? So I'm going to map a button on my MIDI keyboard to this down arrow, okay? So what that means is that the highlighted scene here, I can scroll through it by mapping, okay? So I have a foot pedal that is lined up to that, two of them actually, one that goes up and one that goes down. And it lets me navigate around like this, right? I can also, if I go back to MIDI mapping, map this play button and this stop button. And what that's going to do is it's going to launch the scene that I'm on. So I can say, okay, I want to launch the fifth scene. I go tap, 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 and then hit the play button, this one, to launch that scene. I could also use any of these to launch just the clip on whatever is highlighted, right? So I could go, if I wanted to launch that keys clip that's there, I could go up, up, and then map this to something to launch it from there. So these little things only exist when you're mapping. If I go out of mapping mode, they go away. They're hidden. So they're super valuable, not just for foot pedals, but if you're trying to map anything to a controller with like a finite number of buttons, which all controllers have. So keep an eye out for those. If you're trying to do an elaborate performance setup, these can be really valuable. Now there's another thing that's kind of hidden away here, and that is a good old-fashioned crossfader. If you've seen someone DJ before, like with two records, they had a crossfader to go back and forth between the two records. We have a crossfader too, but it's hidden away. So let's cue that up and do some fun stuff with it. Okay, so if you've ever seen a DJ perform live and they maybe use two records, they have a mixer in the middle, and what they can do is they can cue up the one record, and they have something called a crossfader, which is a fader that moves left and right. So while you're hearing this record, they move the fader all the way over here. Let's get to where you can see me. And then if they switch to this record, they move the fader over there, right? So that's the one you're hearing, is the one where the crossfader goes. Now you can do the same thing here. First we have to find that crossfader. It does exist. It's moved in Live 12. It is not where it used to be. So in Live 12, we're going to go down here. We hit this button to show the mixer, right? But if we hit the little arrow to the right of it, there's a couple other things we can show or hide. And one of them is the crossfader. So when we enable the crossfader, we get two things. First, we get the actual crossfader, which is over here on our master track. And then we get these ABs all over the place. You may have guessed how this works already. So what you can do is you can say, this is A, and let's say this is B. I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily split this. This isn't really how I would do it. I'll show you how I'd really do it in a minute. Okay, and let's put this as B. Okay, so now A is my record on the left and B is my record on the right. So with my crossfader, let's just launch a big scene. Let's launch like this one. Okay, here's A, here's B, right? Right, so you could do some cool things with that. You could set up some tracks that are B and some that are A. One thing that would be fun to do in this case is maybe leave everything A except for this extra drum layer that we added, and that's B, okay? So now, let's just get that going all the way. So now we're gonna hear our full track, everything's cool. Now let's pull in a little bit of that extra beat. Maybe let's go all the extra beat. Right? Let's launch our next track. And let's pull it back in. Right? So that's a great performance tool. That can be a perfect transition. Just keep this drum beat going the whole thing. And then when you need it, when you need a transition, you just pull your crossfader over and then pull it back. There's another way we can use the crossfader that is a really popular trick that a lot of people do. And it's a super helpful trick. Let me show you that. Let's go to a new video. All right, check this out. So we're going to incorporate a whole bunch of things that we know. First, we're going to use an audio effect rack. So let's go to audio effect racks. Let's go down here and let's find, there's kind of a famous one that's used for this. And it is called Fade to Gray. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put fade to gray on a bus here. Okay. I'm going to call everything A. I'm going to turn this fade to gray up all the way. And this already has a reverb on it. That's cool. We'll roll with it. I'm going to make this effect B. Let's make both effects B, even though I'm not really using B. Okay, now I need to send a whole bunch of all my tracks to A, or to my effect bus A. Oof. Okay, so now let's review what's happening here. I've sent a whole bunch of that signal from all of my tracks over to this bus, okay? On this bus is this giant fade to gray effect, okay? This is going to basically take in everything, all of the sound that's happening, and turn it into a wash of noise that we can use as a transition. Okay? And then we assigned that effect to the B deck with our crossfader. So here's what that's going to let me do. Okay? We're good. We're cruising. Let's add our second drum beat in. All right, this is fun. Okay, here comes that transition. And I'm just going to pull this, my crossfader over. There it is. I'm going to go to the next track, and I'm going to pull it back down. Okay, I'm not getting as much out of that fade to gray as I want right now, but it kind of doesn't matter. You can just build up huge effects. Echo, fuzz, let's just make something crazy here. Some huge effects. All right, that sounds good. All right, now let's do that transition again. And then into the next tune, we pull it back in with that noise. And then if we want to be even more extra, let's map that crossfader. So I'm going to go to MIDI mapping. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to put it on this fader. I'm going to get out of MIDI mapping. Now I've got that controller right on here. So if I want to do a big swoosh of effects, just poof, there it is, and then out, right? Really simple. So you don't have to use a crossfader that way, but it's a good trick. Okay, now if you're really interested in getting into DJing, let me give you a little bit of a shortcut here. So I'm going to make a new set. Command N, don't say this. Okay, now I'm going to go over here to my templates. And you should have a DJ set template that comes with Live 12 by default. So I'm just going to double click on that. And here we go. We've got all kinds of fun stuff happening here. So there's some content that's been sent over to session view. So it has some kind of like placeholder content here. I don't think there's really anything here. And this placeholder content might even be something that I put in here. So don't worry about that. But check out the effects you have set up. We already have 4 sends created over here: delay, echo, filter, delay, and reverb. You've got some scenes created. Probably have your crossfader set up. Yep, you have an A and B in your crossfader. So if you're more interested in DJing, check out this DJ set template, and it'll help you get started. And again, yours might not look like mine. I think I've made some adjustments to mine that are not in the default.